If you've ever wanted to check out the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, and potentially get tormented by a demonic spirit for the remainder of your life, altering your perception of reality as you know it, well, you've missed your opportunity. The Warren Occult Museum has been closed to the public since 2019. The only way to explore it now is through the wonderful world of the internet. I'm your host James, and today I bring you the top 10 cursed found footage from the Warren Occult Museum. And we're starting things off with a tour of the Warren Occult Museum by Lorraine Warren herself. There's quite a bit of footage out there of Tony Spera talking about the items in the museum, or even Ed Warren. Not so much stuff with Lorraine touring the museum though, so this is a cool clip. Lorraine discusses how evil many of the artifacts in the room are, making a special point of singling out the infamous Annabelle doll, a doll that'll come up again on this list. It's obvious from this clip that Annabelle is kind of at the center of the museum, said to be the most evil thing housed there. In this clip, Lorraine seems to have a hard time discussing the doll, making it known that she doesn't even want to look at it in the face. Next up on the list, we have a piece of archival footage, Ed and Lorraine Warren assisting in an exorcism. Now, whether or not you believe in exorcisms or even agree with the ethics of exorcisms, there's one thing most of us can probably agree on, that this is an unsettling piece of footage. I'm going to be saying this a number of times on the list, but any creepy video shot in degraded, low-quality VHS like this just has an eerie kind of vibe about it. And this one is especially disturbing because it's an exorcism. This was actually a Buddhist exorcism. There's a language barrier here, and it's of course hard to make out exactly what's going on, but you can hear that the woman being exorcised is in distress, making unnatural noises, convulsing, speaking in a croaky, demonic sounding voice. The video cuts before the ritual is over. Even if you don't believe there was actually any possession going on here, just the circumstance alone is unsettling. It feels like a clip you'd see in the opening of a found footage horror movie or something. At number 8, we have a Paranormal Investigation. This video was posted by the YouTube channel overnight. Not only was the crew able to spend the night at the museum, but they did a paranormal investigation too, complete with a spirit box, the whole deal. I love paranormal investigation videos. I'm not even sold on ghosts myself, but I just find this stuff entertaining, even when nothing actually happens. This is a solid ghost hunt though. The ambience is obviously great. They're in a room packed to the brim with not only items that are supposedly haunted, but downright evil too. At one point they pulled the spirit box out. If you don't know what a spirit box is, it's a device used in paranormal investigations to communicate with spirits or entities from the spirit world. It works by rapidly scanning through radio frequencies, creating a constant stream of white noise. It usually just sounds like but paranormal investigators believe that spirits can manipulate this noise to form coherent voices or words, which can then be heard through the device's speaker. One point you hear the box say what sounds like out, and it actually comes through quite clearly. There's also a part where one of them asks if there are any good spirits in the room, and to make themselves known by making the device in his hand spike. And immediately after he says it, the thing goes off. Pretty interesting. Number 7, the Tony Spera tour. This next video is just a good tour of the entire museum. You get a good 360-degree view of everything. Tony tells some good stories about some of the artifacts housed there, describing the items as the opposite of holy. He tells one particularly unnerving story about the Annabelle doll. Apparently one day Ed Warren was giving a tour discussing some of the objects in the museum. A couple who'd rode in on a motorcycle were on the tour, and the boyfriend started mocking Annabelle, tapping on the glass, taunting the doll, saying how bogus the whole thing was. Well, later that day, he and his girlfriend were driving down the road on the way home from the museum when he lost control of the motorcycle, crashing into a tree. He died instantly. The girlfriend survived, but apparently the last thing they'd been talking about was the Annabelle doll, laughing and joking about the situation right before the accident. Next on the list, we have old footage of Ed Warren showcasing some of the artifacts from the museum. I'm not sure what the footage was used for, possibly an old documentary or news story. I don't know if it was ever released though, because the transfer is pretty low quality and it still has the time code on the bottom, which would have been taken off, of course. Once again, we got some old grainy footage here, which is just inherently creepy. And hearing Ed Warren himself discuss the items just adds another layer of spook factor to the whole thing. The standout from this clip is when Ed discusses the Doll of Shadows. For starters, the Doll of Shadows has got to be one of the most disturbing looking dolls I've ever seen. It really does look evil. And him talking about how it was constructed with parts of animals and human bones and that it's been known to haunt people's dreams, it's pretty spooky. He tells a story of two doll collectors who acquired the doll after a dealer practically gave it to them for free. On the first night they had the doll in their home, they woke up with scratches on their bodies, both having had a horrible nightmare. The same nightmare. The following morning, they woke up with even worse scratches, and that's when they contacted the Warrens, who took the doll off their hands. Apparently, the Doll of Shadows is so cursed and frightening that it's been responsible for stopping people's hearts while in their nightmare-induced state. Next on the list we have Ed Warren provoking a demon. This piece of footage was kept in the Warren Occult Museum for years, not having been released to the public until 2020 when it was posted on YouTube to the official Ed and Lorraine Warren channel. Once again, we have old grainy VHS footage here, which it's just good. It's good ambience. Anyone who's a fan of like analog horror can probably get where I'm coming from. I can see something completely innocuous or innocent on an old home tape, but if it has that grain and the dull droning hum of the old camera, there's just something ominous about it. Especially given the context here, of course, where you have a famous paranormal investigator egging on a demon. As Ed calls for the entity to give a sign that it's there, a chair moves slightly. Eventually the entire table shifts pretty significantly. Not that this would be difficult to fake or anything, but the video's kind of creepy. I think it's mostly because of the context though. The Warrens are renowned. We've all heard of the wild stories about their paranormal encounters, so seeing supposed footage of one actually taking place, it's kind of cool. Number 4, the Satanic Idol. The Satanic Idol is a famous, or rather infamous, artifact housed at the museum. In this video, Tony Spera tells the story behind the demented-looking item. It looks kind of doofy at first, but there is something really off about it, in an unsettling kind of way. Apparently it was found by a hunter in the woods of Sandy Hook in Connecticut in 1991. The guy felt something unnerving about it, the fact that this strange thing was just sitting in the middle of the woods. He decided to walk away, but soon encountered a mysterious elderly man in black robes who began walking alongside him. The robed man never looked in the hunter's direction and didn't say a word. He contacted Ed and Lorraine and led them to the woods, where they determined that the strange figure was an idol used in satanic rituals. It was brought back to the museum, where it's sat ever since. But after just a couple days of having the idol in their possession, Ed found Lorraine curled up in a fetal position in the driveway, completely unresponsive. She was rushed to the hospital, where she spent 3 days in and out of consciousness. Eventually, she was fine, but the doctors had no idea what had caused it. Ed Warren claimed that it was the robed man, a satanic high priest, sending a warning message to Ed and Lorraine. And at number 3, we have Lorraine Warren discussing the Amityville horror house. This clip was posted to YouTube by a Demonico artist who went to the Warrens Occult Museum in September of 2014, where this footage was taken. In it, Lorraine Warren is giving her personal account of what happened in the Amityville horror house and the effect that the case had on her and Ed. Really how it messed them up afterwards. She talked about how terrible the place was, that if you offered her $1 billion, she'd never step foot in the place again. One moment that sticks out to me in this video is when she talks about being levitated. You hear her voice tremble right when she says levitated, almost like she's reliving the experience or just can't believe it herself. Her lips quiver. It really seems like she's recalling something traumatic. Up next, we have a video by Travels with Nick. Most of the video is him discussing some history on the Warrens before visiting the graves of Ed and Lorraine in Monroe, Connecticut. He also visits the Warren Occult Museum. And towards the end of the video, though, we get a clip from an old interview of the Warrens as they discuss some of the items in the museum. Ed Ed discusses how the museum is not a place you should be after 9 o'clock at night, describing 9 to 6 as the psychic hours, the time where paranormal activity is at its peak. He also discusses many of the objects in the room and how they'd been responsible not just for causing mental torment on people that had interacted with them, but also physical trauma, or in some cases, death. And once again, according to Ed, that Raggedy Ann doll was the most evil thing in the museum. And finally, we have footage taken by Ed Warren of the White Lady, a ghost that is said to haunt Union Graveyard in Connecticut. For a long time, this footage was not available to the public, only being shown to small groups, in-person presentations by the Warrens themselves, sometimes at the Occult Museum. But the footage was recently released to the official Ed and Lorraine YouTube channel by Tony Spera. The White Lady is a specter that many have claimed to see roaming the graveyard at night. It's said that she died in childbirth and is now a lost, restless spirit in search of her baby. Stories of the graveyard attracted the attention of the Warrens, who went to investigate. On Ed's 7th night at the cemetery, he captured this footage. Now, I've said it plenty of times already, I know, but we get that beautiful old grainy VHS quality that just unsettles you right off the bat, especially because we're in a cemetery. This also makes it really tough to make out what's going on in the frame when the footage cuts to nighttime, but we do see something moving through the background. It's definitely white and kind of seems to fade in and out, almost as if it may be semi-translucent. Maybe it's just the context and low quality that gives it a bit of a creepy vibe though. What do you all think of the videos on this list? Let us know down in the comments. And with all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.